Hej och välkomna till öppningen av Göteborgs internationella konstbiennal här på Röda Sten konsthall. Welcome to the opening of Gothenburg International Biennial for Contemporary Art on Röda Sten konsthall. I will soon say some welcoming words in Swedish, but they will be followed by my colleague Joanna Leka and curator Lisa Rosendahl, who will speak in English. So please, all non-Swedish speakers, don't leave us. Hej och välkommen till öppningen av den 11:e upplagan av Göteborgs internationella konstbiennal. I år fyller Göteborg 400 år. Och ända sedan 2018 så har vi samarbetat med Lisa Rosendahl kring 2 upplagor av biennalen för att kunna djupdyka i den här händelsen. Nu öppnas alltså The Ghost Ship and the Sea Change här på Röda Sten konsthall och på Franska tomten, nuvarande Packhusplatsen. Biennalen tar utgångspunkt i Göteborgs 400-årsjubileum och den kommer att förändras över de 22 veckor som den kommer att visas. Ett 10-tal konstnärer inleder för att sen bli ett 40-tal. Den 4 september öppnar vi på en rad platser i Göteborg. Göteborgs internationella konstbiennal startades 2001 av Göteborgs kulturnämnd. Sen 2006 så har Röda Sten konsthall utvecklat och producerat biennalen. Den har under de här 20 åren av sin levnad samarbetat med 21 internationella kuratorer och visat ungefär 250 konstnärer. Det är intressanta, utmanande och tankeväckande konstverk som har mött den göteborgska publiken. Och om det inte vore för biennalen så kanske de mötena aldrig hade kommit till stånd. Nya konstverk har skapats i relation till Göteborg och Västsverige. Berättelser och nya sätt att se på det invanda eller det okända har fått utrymme. Kopplingar mellan det som har varit och det som komma skall har synliggjorts. Detta är alltså 8:e upplagan av Göteborgs internationella konstbiennal som Röda Sten konsthall presenterar för göteborgare och tillresta. Vi hoppas att pandemin lägger sig och att så många som möjligt får möjlighet att ta del av biennalen. Så tack Göteborgs kulturnämnd för att ni har gett Röda Sten konsthall den här möjligheten och Göteborg den här berikande ingrediensen. Röda Sten konsthall har vuxit och växer med uppgiften och uppgiften växer med oss. Intresset för biennalen är stort och ett av syftena med att starta den var att bidra till utvecklingen av samtidskonstscenen. Och det har den gjort och det gör den. Det nätverk av samtidskonstaktörer som ansluter sig till biennalen under namnet GIBCA Extended har nu minst 70 olika aktörer. Extended invigs den 3 september. Och kanske är detta nu Sveriges största konsthändelse. Så tack Västra Götalandsregionen och Statens kulturråd för det stöd och intresse som ni visar biennalen. Jag vill också framföra mitt och Röda Sten konsthall styrelses varma, imponerade tack till hela vår personal som med fantastiska insatser står bakom förverkligandet av Göteborgs internationella konstbiennal. Ingen nämnd, ingen glömd. Men en person som måste nämnas är biennalens konstnärliga ledare, Joanna Leka. Så tack Joanna för ditt engagemang, professionalism och ditt stora driv. Slutligen, ett stort tack till dig Lisa Rosendahl för den här långa tiden som på något underligt vis känns väldigt kort. Jag ser fram emot nästa gång som historien kommer träda in i vår gemensamma framtid. Tack ska ni ha.
Welcome to Röda Sten konsthall. I am Joanna Leka, Artistic Director of Göteborg International Biennial for Contemporary Art. Together with the entire team, I have the pleasure to welcome you to the 11th edition of the biennial, whose first part opens today. For this edition of the biennial, coinciding with the 400 years anniversary of the city of Gothenburg, we have collaborated with curator Lisa Rosendahl, whose curatorial proposal you will discover along different venues in the city between June and November this year. To celebrate the city, the biennial edition spans over 22 weeks and opens in two parts, in June and in September, transforming along the way. The first part of the project is hosted by Rödasten Konsthall, where we are now, and at Franska Tomten in Gothenburg Harbor. Starting in September, artworks will be presented both online and at different venues throughout the city. The biennial app will act as an exhibition space for a series of sound commissions developed in connection to places in Gothenburg. And is a tool I would recommend for organizing the biennial visit in the city. Starting 2013, each biennial edition is generously accompanied by presentations of contemporary art throughout the entire region of Västra Götaland, west of Sweden, program of the extended network. In 2021, the regional program premieres in September, coinciding with the opening of part 2 of the biennial. To mark the opening of this first part of Göteborgs International Biennial for Contemporary Art, the digital program will introduce the curatorial framework for the project, as well as a series of sound commissions. In addition, to bridge the geographical differences and distances to the exhibition spaces, throughout the entire opening weekend, our website will host screenings of video works by Hira Nabi and Tabita Reser, otherwise presented in Gothenburg here at Rödasten Konsthall. Hosted by contemporary art institutions, museums, temporary construction sites, public gardens or stations for public transport, as well as online, this 11th edition of the biennial is also a result of the trust and support we were met with by our collaborators and partners. It is the first time for our project to sustain a collaboration with a curator for 2 consecutive biennial editions, in an endeavor to test new ways to engage with locality and define different temporalities for the project, for collaborations with the artists, local stakeholders, communities. And every other year, our project takes the form of a public festival, of and for contemporary art. By committing to a 3-year process in collaboration with curator Lisa Rosendahl, we strive to consolidate and make visible the invisible part of our project. As a dedicated conversation partner locally and internationally, sustaining artistic practices and welcoming interdisciplinary collaborations in public and semi-public contexts. In 2018, we imagined this 3-year cycle as one that brings change to our project and to our organization and helps us define sustainable collaboration formats. And 2020 was indeed a year of change in operations, and as you know, not just for our organization, but the world at large, which makes us all the more grateful to the support of our partners, here in Gothenburg and elsewhere. I would like to acknowledge the support of Blåstället Konsthall, the Garden Society of Gothenburg, Gothenburg City Library, Göteborgs Konst, Göteborgs Konsthall, Jaspis Konstnärsnämnden, Konstensketen Festfastigheter, the Museum of World Culture, Public Art Agency Sweden, Västtrafik, Trafikkontoret, Trafikverket and Tredje Våningen, collaborators either for artistic commissions, for program and hosts of the biennial exhibition in 2021. For sharing their knowledge with our team, as well as for dialogue with contributing artists to the 11th edition of the biennial, I would like to thank HDK Valand Academy at Gothenburg University, Gothenburg Art Museum, Gothenburg City Triennial, Göteborgs Litteraturhus, Halland Museum of Art, the Maritime Museum, Museum of Gothenburg, Museum of Migration and Migranternas Hus, PARS Platform for Artistic Research Sweden, and Skogen. I would also like to address our gratitude to project funders supporting individual presentations of artistic practices. Embassy of Canada in Sweden, Goethe Institut, Institut för Auslandsbeziehungen, Institut Français de Suède, and Office for Contemporary Art Norway. I would also like to thank our close conversation partners and members of Occasional Groundwork Network, the biennial organizations IVA International and Lofoten International Art Festival. Last but not least, on behalf of the entire team, I would like to thank curator Lisa Rosendal, who embarked in this long-term process together with us, and to the contributing artists to the 11th edition of the biennial, whose trust and dedication throughout this process, most of it remote due to the pandemic, was essential to the project. Thank you. In these challenging times around the world, it is a privilege and a pleasure to welcome you to the 11th edition of our biennial and to the biennial exhibitions here in Gothenburg. We hope to see you all in September here. And I give the floor to Lisa Rosendal, curator of this biennial edition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia and Joanna, for your thoughtful introductions. Before I start adding to the list of thank yous, I would like to say some curatorial words about the biennial. As has already been mentioned, the 2021 biennial relates to the 400-year jubilee of the city of Gothenburg. Art relates to the notion of history in different ways than the history books and the historical museums. Art exhibitions have the pleasure, privilege, and critical possibility to work with facts and fiction at the same time. As Saidiya Hartman has pointed out, critical fabulation, to position oneself in between fact and fiction, is absolutely necessary when attempting to formulate counter-histories and imagine not only what has been, but what could have been, what should have been, and what might happen. The central question this biennial explores is how different ways of understanding and telling about the past might affect the future. Can readdressing the inequalities past and present create a more equal tomorrow? When putting together this project, I have been operating from the insight inspired by the concept of multi-sited archaeology, that a city like Gothenburg, founded in 1621 as an international harbor and military outpost, can only be understood from also looking at other places. In that way, one could say that although only a few of the artworks that we will exhibit deal with Gothenburg specifically, somehow all of them do. All the artworks are part of the same history, although speaking from different positions. How might we, for example, understand the former shipbuilding city of Gothenburg through looking at Hiranabi's film about a ship breaking yard in Pakistan? How might we understand Swedish consumer culture from looking at Susanne Kriman's photographs of mangroves in Southeast Asia, polluted with plastic waste and oil spills? The multi-sited narrative the biennial is attempting to plot out nevertheless starts from a particular place in Gothenburg. The so-called Franska tomten, translatable as the French plot of land in the historical harbor, a place currently known as Packhusplatsen. This plot of land got its name in 1794 when it was exchanged for the Caribbean island of Saint Barthélemy as part of a trade deal between Sweden and France. While France got trading rights in Gothenburg, the Swedes took over the colonial administration of Saint-Barthélemy. The island was governed as a hub for the transatlantic triangular trade, including substantial trade of enslaved persons. At Franska Tomten today, there is no official acknowledgement of this violent part of Sweden's history. Nevertheless, there are a number of traces that make us see how this past is part of our own ongoing present. On site, we find artworks commissioned in the 1940s by the modern-day transatlantic shipping companies who built their headquarters there. They show how racist and sexist ideology that underpinned the European colonial project continued long after colonialism as such was considered to be over. Our own capitalist society, structured around the idea of perpetual expansion and inequality, is of course also part of this story. The biennial has invited contemporary artists to respond to Franska Tomten, or to exhibit works that in different ways connect with the questions raised by this narrative plot and actual plot of land. Through the artworks, the biennial follows the historical traces at Franska Tomten to where they meet other places, voices, and histories. Instead of imposing a new, coherent narrative about Gothenburg on top of an existing one, this form of telling aims to be polyvocal and open-ended. So perhaps one could say that this biennial relates to the 400 years since the founding of Gothenburg, but is in fact an inversion of a traditional historical exhibition. In the biennial, the gaps between the works are just as important as the works themselves. They stand in for the many untold and forgotten histories that will never be possible to tell. They are also spaces for action. In the gaps and unwritten chapters, each one of us are invited to form associations and draw conclusions. On that note, I would like to draw extra attention to the invisible works that we have commissioned for this biennial. Since 2019, GIBCA has commissioned sound works relating to particular places in the city that can be listened to via the GIBCA app. The first new sound work this year is by Manuel Pelmush, whom we will shortly see an interview with as part of the digital opening program. From September on, 4 more sound works by Meira Ahmemulic, Pia Sandström, Lisa Torell, and Hamn, Malin Holgersson, and Nassim Agili will be made available. I would also like to say something about the exhibition architecture. During my research for the biennial, I came across the story of a shipwreck that has not been given much attention in the history of Gothenburg. The ship in question was Havmannen, a Danish frigate bound for the Caribbean colony of St. Thomas that experienced mutiny on board and sank outside Gothenburg in 1683. The story of Havmannen reminded me of one of Gothenburg's most famous ships, the East Indiaman Göteborgs, that sank outside the city on its way back from China in 1745. The 2 shipwrecks were both found in the 1980s. But whereas the East Indiaman received a lot of attention, eventually leading to a full-scale replica of the ship being built and sailed along the same historic trade route to China, the West India-bound ship, Havmannen, was left at the bottom of the sea. For this year's biennial, we decided to dig until this ship comes back into view. Commissioning architects Kooperative fyrahundraårsjubileum to make a full-scale metaphorical replica of Havmannen to be used as exhibition architecture. The gesture mirrors the intention of the earlier replica of Göteborgs to connect the city's past to its future, but with one important difference. At Röda Sten Konsthall, the metaphorical ship will not be made into a perfect whole, but stay fragmented, like the actual ship's ruin. As exhibition architecture, the ship represents how the past continues to frame the present, but also how the ruins of history can be repurposed. As my colleagues have already mentioned, the biennial will open in stages this year, transforming along the way. This weekend, we are opening the first part at Röda Sten Konsthall and Franska Tomten, with works by Michael Beers, Evan Ifekoya and Ajamu X, Susanne Kriman, Anna Ling, Ibrahim Mahama, Silvano Lora, Hira Nabi, Daniela Ortiz, Manuel Pelmush, and Tabita Reser, and documentation of proposals for public monuments for Franska Tomten by Hanan Benamar, Arya Din, Aisha Hamid, Bruno Lagomarsino, Fatima Moayim, Daniela Ortiz, and Jimmy Roberts. In July, we add another 2 works at Röda Sten by Jessica Warboys and Damla Kilikiran. In September, more artists will be included, and all remaining biennial venues will open. Konsthallen Blå Stället, Göteborgs Konsthall, Museum of World Culture, the Garden Association of Gothenburg, Risö, and several public places across the city. Also at Röda Sten, more artworks will be installed. And in this process, the ghost ship will break apart and make room for more voices and histories. Now, to the thank yous. Making a biennial is a very collective effort. Firstly, I would like to thank the artists for their works and for the inspiring conversations that we have had. I hope that at least some of us can meet in the exhibitions for the second part of the biennial opening in September. Secondly, I would like to thank Kooperative fyrahundraårsjubileum and particularly Andreas Müller for accepting my invitation to make a ship as exhibition architecture and taking on the challenges this has meant. Then, I of course want to thank Carl-Henrik Andersson and the whole technical team, Glenn, Ingrid, Andreas, Dave, for actually building that ship and installing all the artworks. You have done an amazing job. I'm also very grateful to the biennial's artistic director, Joanna Leka, for all the conversations we have had during the work with the 2 biennials, for challenging me when I needed it and supporting me all the way through. Thank you for your hard work and for keeping it all together. Maria Elena Guerra Aredal, the biennial producer, and Eugene Hu, the production assistant, thank you for all your work, for keeping calm and keeping the ship sailing through every storm so far. We have now just one more tornado to go. Thank you also to Johanna Földbeck Martell, my research intern on loan from HDK Valand Academy. And thank you finally to Mia Christosdotter for the invitation to begin with, to curate these two biennials.
My name is Manuel Pelmuș. I'm an artist born in Bucharest, Romania. My background is in choreography and dance, but I work very often within the visual arts context. And I'm currently a research fellow and an assistant professor at the Academy of Fine Art in Oslo, called KIO. I very often make live works for the context of exhibitions or museums or sometimes even public spaces. My practice is quite research oriented, meaning that I like to work with archives or specific contexts and look at how collective memory or how history is constructed. And I'm looking also at the relationship between bodies, institutions, contexts and politics. I'm also interested in how live works in an exhibition context reconfigures the public space and social and political relations, or at least in the possibility of, or the potentiality of that taking place. For the Gothenburg Biennial, I propose a live work, or if you want, a live performance that will manifest as a sound piece, meaning that in order for you to see this live performance, you need to hear it. I'm interested also to work with the history and the specific context of this place. The Gothenburg train station is the oldest train station still in use in Sweden, but also a place where a lot of movement, historical movement, in the sense of migration, immigration has taken place. It is from this particular station that the big wave of Swedish migrants left for the United States in the beginning of the last century, but also where the refugee wave in 2015 found a place for arrival. I'm also interested to work around questions of visibility and invisibility, meaning hidden histories and histories that are shown, also related to this specific place, but also more generally. And also to unpack or to scrutinize or to look at how different histories, some very particular connected to the station or to Gothenburg, are connected to my history, but also to others that are moving through this station and moving through time and history in a way. It's quite important to mention that I have performed live this work. I did 2 site visits in Gothenburg, and the plan was to record it live, so to perform it live. Due to the conditions of the pandemic, I did a little conceptual change, which I finally find quite interesting. I recorded instead live in Bucharest at the central station, Gara de Nord. And I believe the juxtaposition of these 2 realities have many points in common and also many differences. But I think it's quite an interesting experience to be, for me and for the listener or for the viewer, to be in both places at the same time.